Change takes time, growth takes work, but showing up every day is progress.
This is the 365 Proof Podcast, where we share real stories, honest conversations, and practical insight from mental health experts, addiction specialists, and people living the message.
If you're looking for guidance, inspiration, or real insight into recovery and purpose, you're in the right place.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 365 Proof Podcast by Defining Wellness. I'm your host, Daniel Phyfer.
And I'm the co-host, Courtney Milan, and we have a visitor, among two visitors.
Yep.
I'm Carly Caver. I'm here in Central Mississippi sharing about defining wellness.
Awesome.
And we're also in here with our guest, who I'm extremely excited to tell you all about, Colonel Steven Maxwell. Welcome, Colonel.
Thank you, Daniel. Glad to
Welcome.
be here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. So Colonel Maxwell is somebody with 30 years of public service experience. Colonel Maxwell started as an agent with the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics, came up through the ranks, has earned countless accolades that would take me an hour to tell you all about, and you know, has moved up in management, director roles, you name it. And he's a lifelong Mississippian, which I think is also extremely important. He's a graduate from the FBI National Academy. And not only that, Colonel Maxwell is somebody when you hear him speak, you want to sit down and listen. And so that's my experience, at least. You know, I'm excited to have him here. I'm looking forward to getting to know him better. We have a close mutual friend who, you know, she's Miss Ruth Ann Rigby, which we all know very well, who made our introduction a couple of years ago. So Colonel Maxwell speaks to young people, adults. He's a leadership expert at this point as well, which I'm excited to talk about. So Colonel Maxwell, welcome again.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
So Colonel, you do a lot of speaking about health, substance abuse, mental health, narcotics investigations. You know, I know now in your role, you're the director of corrections investigations, right? So tell us a little bit about what that looks like coming over from, you know, the Bureau of Narcotics to the MDSC.
Yeah, okay. So I was hired on with the Bureau of Narcotics in 1994, and I started off as an agent. I was blessed and fortunate to have a lot of good people in my life, and their fingerprints are all over my career, all over my life. And a lot of great mentors. You know, Daniel mentioned Ruth Ann Rigby. She and her husband, retired Colonel Joe Rigby, are two of my mentors. They took me under their wing and really kind of introduced me into this space, the space of public health, with a focus on substance use disorder and mental illness. And so I grew up in I guess what you would describe as a very dysfunctional environment, and I saw mental illness and I saw substance use disorder, and it was just the norm, you know. But after I got hired on with MBN and meeting folks like Ruth Ann and Jody, I began to learn that it's the norm for some people, but it's a norm where people are struggling and people find themselves in a bad way through different paths and avenues in life. And so I saw where what I was doing as a public safety professional intersected with public health. And that piqued my curiosity even more. And as my career began to, I guess, evolve, and I learned more about public health and public safety and how they both converge and diverge, and both disciplines have the same focus, which is to improve the overall health and well-being of society as a whole. I began to look at people differently. From the biopsychosocial spiritual model, where we are a spirit living in a body, possessing a soul, created to socialize one with the other, living life in those four dimensions of our existence. And those four dimensions are constantly, you know, converging. And depending upon, you know, what we're dealing with, depending upon how we're reared, depending upon, you know, who we're exposed to, depending upon what we place in our bodies, sometimes and oftentimes there's internal conflict among those four dimensions of our beings. And so just walking through my career having the opportunity to meet so many different people. It's given me an opportunity to have access to different platforms and to engage people and to talk with people and to continue to listen and learn so that I can be a much better leader.
Mm. There's so much there. That's
Right,
good.
there's a lot.
So first I want to start with, you grew up in Wiggins, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Was there a time when you were a kid, when did you develop that desire to be a public servant? Really? Or is that did that ever happen? I guess. Tell me.
Yeah. Man, I've got so many different stories. So I just told this story recently. I was reared by my grandmother, and she was born in 1924.
Wow.
Okay, so you can just imagine the environment that she reared me in. And she had 5 girls, no boys. And so when my mom gave birth to me at age 17, I became her son.
Mm.
And we had an incident. And so, my mom was young, her sisters were young, and I think at the time maybe 2 of them were married. So my mom was dating this guy, and she's okay with me telling the story.
Yeah.
So my mom was dating this guy, and the guy showed up at my grandmother's house, okay? And he was driving a car. And so I walked outside, and, it was a kind of like a nice sports car for the early 80s, And me being a little kid, I was curious. So I walked out, and I'm looking at the car, and I noticed that the window was burst, and the glass was on the inside of it.
Mm.
Now, I was watching shows like Andy Griffith, The Heat of the Night, just shows like this. And, I was into James Bond,
Right.
007 at the time. And so I'm looking at the car, and he's sweating, and he just was acting different. So I went inside, and my grandmother tells me that I walked in, and I told her that I thought the car was stolen. And believe it or not, I picked up the phone and called the sheriff's office
Oh,
No.
goodness.
and told them that someone brought a stolen car to my grandmother's house.
Wow.
And, there was this sheriff's deputy that everybody knew, and that was J.D. Hall. And he showed up at the house, and he took care of business. Yeah.
And you got to watch.
Yeah. And so, but, little stories like that, just things that I experienced where early on in my life, there was something, I guess, inside of me that said no to deviant behavior. And so that wasn't the first time that I did that, but there were other stories as well.
So
Yeah.
you had the instinct at,
Yeah, and
at
I
a
was-
young age.
Oh yeah,
that-
I was single digits in age, maybe
Oh, wow.
8, 9.
That's
You know?
crazy.
You
Yeah.
think Deputy Barney Fife had something
Yeah,
to do with it?
maybe
I mean,
so.
what
Yeah,
would he have
yeah.
done?
Yeah, yeah. And so, it was just a part of me.
Wow.
I want to point out though, in you also have the ability to look at individuals and the story that they have within them. So it's not just you're a deviant, get
Yeah.
locked up, but it's
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have a story. Let's unpack this. Let's see where it started.
Yeah, throughout my career, especially when you're working in drug law enforcement, communication is extremely important.
Gotta be.
And I would always lead in with, help me help you, help yourself,
Mm-hmm.
in every aspect. And irregardless of what someone was dealing with, whatever the challenge was, it would always be, let me help you help yourself.
I like that.
So 30 years in at this point, you moved over to Department of Corrections, heading up investigations. What are you seeing? What did you used to see that you're not seeing anymore? I mean, I want to talk about, especially for our Mississippian listeners, what's going on in our communities. I know I also want to talk about some of the speaking you do when you're talking to young adults and young children, and I want to get into all that, but let's start with kind of what's going on around us. I think that's super important.
Yeah, so transferring over to the Mississippi Department of Corrections is kind of like a full circle moment. I spent 30 years identifying, investigating individuals who were involved in the cultivation, manufacturing, packaging, and selling of illicit drugs, the diversion of pharmaceutical drugs. Spent 30 years doing that, and a lot of those folks are now under the jurisdiction of MDOC or they're in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But what I've seen since entering in the law enforcement in 1994 is a rapid evolution of the drug culture. And as you know, the drug culture is a subculture one of the subcultures, one of the many subcultures that comprise the overall American culture. But to a point you made earlier, Daniel, the drug culture is one of the most invasive but yet indiscriminate subcultures of all of those that comprise American culture.
No question.
And, I've come in contact with individuals who are very wealthy, that have some of the same struggles as individuals who live below the subsistence level. And one of the things that I've learned about addiction is that the pain associated with addiction is indiscriminate. You feel the same pain associated with addiction if you're living through your addiction, through the disease of addiction, if you're very wealthy or if you're very poor. So the pain is indiscriminate.
Right.
Wealth allows you to have greater access to maybe care, but the pain associated with that is different. The journey into the disease of addiction might be different, but the pain is the same. And so what I have seen is that we've seen an evolution from the illicit drug market being primarily agrarian, where when you look at, let's say, products derived from the coca plant, you would have to farm first because you've got to cultivate the plant. The same thing with, illicit products derived from the poppy plant. You've got to farm that plant first, and even cannabis. So the infrastructure for being involved in the illicit drug market from an agrarian standpoint, the implementation cost is much higher than where we are now, where we've evolved from that to the majority of the drugs that we're seeing right now are synthetic based.
Yeah.
And it makes great economic sense if you're on that side of things.
Of course. Better margins.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You increase your profit margin. You can decrease your workforce. You don't need as much of a robust infrastructure. You don't need all the farm equipment. You don't even need the land anymore. And on that side of things, you're much more exposed. And so it has evolved from primarily an agrarian-based ecosystem to more synthetic. And that has literally changed the landscape. And I know by virtue of the care that you all provide, when I initially entered into public service, the people that I would see struggling with addiction were young adults and older. But now when I talk to families and when I get phone calls and when I'm talking with healthcare professionals like you all, we're talking about kids as young as 10 years old who are struggling with addiction because the science and the technology that drives the overall American culture, drives its subcultures. And because of science and technology, we have drugs on the market now that pose an imminent threat to public safety and public health, but they don't look like they do. They don't smell like they do. They don't taste like they do. They're not marketed and branded like they do, like they possess the lethality that they do. And one of the things that I always say when I'm talking with elementary school students, middle school students, and high school students is that if I ask you all if you want to do a line of cocaine, you'll be like, nope. If I ask you if you want to smoke some crack, you'll be like, I don't want to be a crackhead.
Yeah.
If I ask you if you want to smoke some meth, I ain't losing my teeth.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a meth head. But if I ask you, would you like a gummy? If I ask you, would you like a Jolly Rancher?
Or
Okay?
a brownie.
Or a brownie.
Yep.
Okay? Now your thought process or your mindset is different.
It's not as bad.
Right, because as a child, your parents have probably given you Flintstone vitamins, probably given you gummy vitamins, okay? You've probably had a prescription medication for a gummy medication. So the psychology and the mindset is different, and the illicit drug market plays on that. Where in the past, when I initially entered into law enforcement in 1994, we were primarily concerned with the illicit drug thoroughfare, okay, by way of people becoming addicted to drugs, and the misuse and abuse of pharmaceutical drugs. But now we have products that are sold legally in convenience stores and gas stations that are not regulated by the USDA or the FDA, okay? You can't trust what's on the packaging and the labeling, okay? They could be packaged and labeled and marked as CBD content. But when I was with the Bureau of Narcotics, we tested products throughout the state that are sold in convenience stores and gas stations. Many of them contain THC contents above 70%. Some of them contain synthetic opioids and cannabinoids. Okay.
Wow.
And so people who are using these drugs in convenience stores and gas stations don't know that they're potentially using a product that poses just as much of an imminent threat to their health and safety as the use of illicit drugs and the misuse and abuse of pharmaceutical drugs. So the landscape's changed, and parents have to have conversations with their kids in today's society as young as they can understand what they're saying.
Right.
Like you can't wait until your child is 8 or 9 to be talking to them about drugs. Like you got to start having that conversation early on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that layers into the whole concept of healthy aging. When we at the moment of conception, okay, as humans, we start aging. It's a part of human growth and development. We don't view it that way. We just view it as infant, child, adolescence, teenage, young adults, so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But aging is a part of that process. And aging healthy doesn't begin when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, or 50s. Aging healthy begins as soon as you're born and your parents are making the decisions as to what they're placing inside of your body. Because what is placed inside of your body changes you at a physiological level. The food you eat, what you drink, and then as you get older, when you're presented with the opportunity to place things inside of your body that are unhealthy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the conversation should begin before you even age to that point.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Courtney and I were talking before you got here, just talking about the language and the shift in the language to the gummies and the brownies. I mean, I'm potty training my almost 3-year-old right now. And if he goes potty, he gets a blue gummy.
Yeah.
He gets a blue gummy bear.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is not a weed gummy bear by any means, but
Right.
I mean, I can see how
Me
they're
too.
playing on it, like
Absolutely.
you said.
Like I didn't know that like all these people that are creating this, I mean, they're marketing geniuses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Gross.
like it's the cartel, like these marketing people that,
Yeah.
I mean, gummies,
They-
brownies.
They understand the consumer, is what it sounds like at a high level.
Yeah. And sadly, they know more about the American culture than most Americans do.
Mm.
There's a presentation that I do, and I have these photos and videos. And in one photo, you see tablets. Okay, they've been pressed, cut, colored, and scored, and they're referred to as rainbow fentanyl. But they look like sweet tarts, but it's actually fentanyl that's been pressed, cut, colored, and scored. And it may be sold as, it could be sold as candy. It could be sold as prescription medication. But that's where we are right now, as
I've
far
never
as
thought
as
of it
far
that
as
way.
the drug landscape with synthetic drugs. Fentanyl is a very unique drug. It's highly potent.
Mhm.
Illicit fentanyl. Now,
Right.
in a medicinal setting, in a hospital setting,
Right.
great drug. Okay, but in the illicit setting, all right, it makes sense from an economic standpoint and a marketing standpoint for me to transition to selling synthetic drugs because fentanyl is so powerful. I can get a Ziploc bag of fentanyl, okay, and it's so potent that I could press hundreds of thousands of pills, and because of the fact that it is a synthetic drug, think about it. I can press pills, okay, I can mix it with cough syrup and sell it as lean or scissor.
Yep.
I can mix it in food, brownies, gummies, cookies, cakes. I can press it and sell it as pharmaceutical drugs. I can use it as a cut and a lace for illicit drugs, or I can sell it as cocaine. I can sell it as heroin. I can sell it as methamphetamine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's where we are in the illicit drug market. And even individuals who are, living with the disease of addiction, they may think they're buying cocaine, but who knows what they're buying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, I've gotten
know.
personal experience.
Yeah.
I was addicted to opioids for
Yeah.
years, and I got sober, fortunately, right before fentanyl. I got sober about 8 years ago. And right then and there is when, people were starting to enter treatment, hopefully. And that's what they were seeking. I wasn't, but I do remember several times getting blue oxycodone 30 milligram pills. They were pressed. They looked exactly the same. And I also know a lot of people from that exact example who have died.
Mhm.
They've died because they went to a different dealer, or the dealer was like changing, the way he did things, and they look exactly the same, and all it takes is one pill. I mean, I've got friends from our local community who have passed away just based on that specific example right there.
Yeah.
So it's really scary.
It is, the science and technology, again, that is layered into all of the legitimate, disciplines and markets out there. It's layered into the illicit drug market. And so Pfizer, they have their researchers and chemists, and so do the drug cartels. They have their clandestine chemists, and
Right.
they have people that do same like and similar research.
So
Gosh.
I would assume that the volume and the access to illicit drugs has increased based on what you've said. I mean, have you seen the volume rise, or is access easier, or you tell me?
I think on every front, the efforts to impede drugs from entering into this country, I think they're working. They're doing what they are expected to do. But you got to think the amount of illicit drugs that are being manufactured throughout the entire world. Everybody wants their product to
Yeah.
come to the United States.
For sure.
I mean, we're a country with roughly about 340 plus million people. And, our definition of poverty, in contrast and comparison to some other countries, is not the same.
Yeah.
Like in other countries, I mean, people look at us and our poverty is like, well, yeah, you're still eating good. But we have the means to purchase drugs. And unfortunately, we like to get high in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And so every country where someone is producing an illicit drug, they want their drugs sold here.
Yep.
And so you've got so many different points of entry. And, it's like being in a boat, and, you can prevent the boat from taking on water by plugging a toe and a finger in every hole. Okay. And if you've got 20 holes, you're good.
Yeah.
But if you
right.
got 21,
Mhm.
you're in trouble.
unless
You're
someone
gonna
else is in the
sink.
boat with you,
Yeah. You're
Right.
gonna sink.
And so I use that analogy at times, but I think everything that we are doing at the local, state, and federal level, I think it's working, but it's just not enough.
Yeah.
It's just not enough. I mean, so look at the state of Mississippi, okay? We're a state with roughly about 2.9 million people,
Mhm.
right? And right now, if you look at the number of individuals that are currently under the jurisdiction of MDOC, it's probably going to be anywhere from, 19 to 20 or so that are actually incarcerated. They're behind prison walls, gates, doors, so forth and so on. They're going to be there for a little bit, okay?
Yep.
And then you've got probably 40 plus thousand that are in the community corrections programs. So you have a population of people that are under the jurisdiction of MDOC that if it was considered a county, it would be roughly the 12th or 13th largest, most populated county in the state of Mississippi.
Mm.
And if you looked at those individuals who were just behind prison walls and gates and doors and things, it would probably be about the 42nd, 43rd, or 44th most populated municipality. And the majority of those people that are there, okay, they are there for doing something that was either directly or indirectly associated with drugs or mental illness,
Mhm.
okay? And the majority of them at some point will be released after, they have served the sentence that has been imposed on them. And so that's where the conversation about care comes in,
Yeah.
because you don't want them to recidivate.
Right.
They commit another crime. That's another individual or family or community that's traumatized. And so the conversation is so broad. But most people enter the conversation, if you view the discussion and the conversation as a river, most people enter that conversation at the point of their own experience, as opposed to having the mindset of going as far upstream as possible to talk about resolutions, to talk about solutions and answers to the questions.
Right. Wow. I mean, I can think about my personal life that before I got sober, every single issue that I had was directly correlated to my mental health or substances that I was using. And I think that like on the state level, and we're fortunate here at Defining Wellness where we work with MDOC, we work with all of them. And, you know, we are really good. And let's talk about access to care, I guess is where I'm going.
Mhm.
The ACA, Affordable Care Act, insurance, whatever is happening with that down the road, we're unsure. It sounds like it's going to stick around for a little bit. Luckily, especially for our state, we have been able to deliver care to people that are coming out of that system at an extremely high level that they would not be able to get otherwise. You know, we treat every walk of life here, but we treat people that are entirely insurance dependent. And more importantly, yes, we treat the Southeast, but we treat Mississippians, and we do a really good job. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel on that. So the problem with that is, you know, with access to care and insurance and all this other stuff is, okay, here's a specific example. We get a call yesterday. Guy's been in jail for 6 months. Possession of controlled substance, intent to distribute, the whole thing. Very much a user and very much in need of treatment. Well, he needed to do his time first, right? Understandably so. Okay, he's got a marketplace insurance policy. He gets out of treatment. He wants to come to treatment. He needs treatment. But the insurance company says, he's been sober for 6 months. He doesn't qualify for any levels of care. We're not going to pay for it.
So
So
frustrating.
then what we do really well also is we refer people to other places if they can't come to us. Okay, well, this guy gets out and he's on a wait list at a community mental health center. And guess what? He goes back out, and by the time the 2-week wait list is over with, he's back in jail.
Yep. Relapse and recidivist.
And so conversations like this and us also educating people within the system, like, hey, it's up to you and the judge. We know that. But like,
Right.
if you want him to get treatment, send him to treatment.
Right.
You know?
I mean, Daniel, you make such a great point, particularly when you talked about the insurance company and the insurance company saying, well, you know,
He doesn't meet
detox.
criteria.
Right, meet the
Yeah.
criteria. I was having a conversation just this morning about something same like and similar. And I can tell you this because it was my thought process before I was educated about the foundations within this discipline. Most people think, the average person thinks that detox is treatment.
Oh, yeah.
Most people think that, you know, if, let's say, for instance, I'm arrested today and I'm in jail, you know, for a week, you know, the term, oh, yeah, well, let them stay in there and they'll dry out.
Let him.
Right.
And they think that they can just go back to,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's detox.
Mhm.
Right.
And I used to have the same mindset,
Right.
but there's so much more after that. Like, buddy, you need to get treatment.
Yeah.
Right.
And it ain't just for 2 weeks,
Yeah, for sure.
especially if you've been using meth or
Right.
fentanyl.
You hadn't
Right.
been sleeping. I mean,
Right.
you
Like
know,
you need to be inpatient for 90 days, 120 maybe or
Right.
more.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You know, and recovery is not, you know, just 2 weeks when you get out and you're done. It's for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
That's
that's it.
right.
And so educating
Yeah.
the public, educating the decision makers
Right.
is a critical, important factor in doing that.
We've been successful with some of our MDOC connections specifically, but really court systems, judges. You know, we work with a lot of local attorneys. You know, guy gets a DUI and he's like, I think he needs to sit in jail for 30 days. And I'm
Right.
like, okay, well, he's going to have to pay out of pocket when that happens instead of using his Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's a challenge.
Mhm.
And look, my parents told me all the time, if you get in jail, you're going to stay in there. Right. And so I get that to a point, but also, you know, that, like you said, that's not treatment. You know, if he goes in for 2 weeks and he dries out, he's been, you know, full withdrawals in jail. He gets out, maybe he's still having some withdrawals. What's he going to go do?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
what does he know? What is the disease telling him to do?
Right.
You know, he's been in there for a week, 2 weeks, and I'd be curious to see what the inside of the system looks like helping people like that also. But he gets out, that monkey is ready.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this. One of the things that I've learned since I've been at MDOC is that Well, it's a priority of Commissioner Keynes to make sure that as long as someone is under the jurisdiction of MDOC, that they get the care that they need, and not only get the care, but also have an opportunity to acquire a skill, so that once they are released walking into a job. And getting connected with resources and not only getting connected with resources, but just getting connected with support groups, okay? Having a plan, and you're not just stepping out of the boat, but you're stepping out of the boat and you're able to walk on water back to the shore.
Yeah, right.
And so within the Department of Corrections right now, there are a number of programs set up to ensure that inmates are getting the care that they need.
What does that look like? Is it education about the disease of addiction?
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, there are courses,
Okay.
that they can take, classes that they can take, and some of them are taught by, offenders that are actually in recovery themselves. And then, of course, there's also mental health services that are provided as well, and there's also, healthcare
Yeah,
that is
psych.
directed at, the disease of addiction and mental illness as well.
That's great.
It's important for me to say that while I talked about getting into treatment, access to care, I believe that there are consequences, and I believe consequences are necessary for change.
Absolutely.
Consequences were necessary for me to change. So I don't, for the listeners, I'm not necessarily saying that somebody who commits a crime doesn't need to serve time, but I think that once that obligation has been fulfilled, the work has to continue or start on some level.
Yeah, what you said brings me to, a discussion that I had, I guess about a month or so ago, and we were talking about value. Okay, in this age of AI, in this age of robotics and where we're going with quantum computing and things of that nature, I still believe that the most valuable resource and asset is people. People. Okay, and what we can't do is begin to not see the value in people. Okay, and view them in their condition, as opposed to viewing them prior to and viewing them who they truly are and can be, once we help them navigate through that. And so value is extremely important. Value is extremely important when it comes to self-leadership, self-accountability. It's also a conversation that has to be had as early on in life as possible, because we value so many things at a level that it's to the detriment of humans,
Right.
because we have to avoid placing a value of AI, placing a value of technology, placing a value of anything above the life of a human.
Yeah, I think you're just missing the whole point. When you do that.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think that those things can absolutely help us as a society, but what is a society filled with?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You look at the United States, I mean, we're roughly roughly 340 plus million, but China's 1.4 billion. India 1.4 billion. I mean that is a resource, that we couldn't compete with, but we can on the technology front. I use those two countries because, those two countries view us as their nemesis, and competitor, and we view them the same way.
Yep.
And so, we need all of our people to be a part of this team
Right.
of America,
Man, for sure. What Courtney, you had a good question you talked to me about.
did.
I really want you to.
What's a moment in your career that changed how you see people? Was there a particular moment?
That's such a good question.
Not just as criminals,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the public or colleagues.
Yeah. So I guess what comes to mind is we were working a case in a rural county. And I was a district captain. running a district office. We comprised of about 9 counties that we were responsible for. And an agent was going into a resident, and he was working in an undercover capacity, and he was there to purchase methamphetamine. And we're listening, okay, to the conversation, audio recording device. And he goes in, and the mother approaches him, and she's gonna do the deal, and she's gonna sell him some meth. But then she starts talking about her 12-year-old daughter, okay, and he tries to put her on him and him on her. She was basically trying to encourage him to have sex with her 12-year-old daughter for money so that she can buy drugs to support her drug habit, because she was selling the meth to him for someone else.
Right.
Okay.
And at that moment, I just began to think, what would cause someone to want to prostitute their own child? 12-year-old, just 12, 13 years old. Like what would cause you to do that? And so that just kind of, along with, what I'd seen and what I experienced growing up, it caused me to make the decision to look for answers that were farther upstream than where I was. And that person was someone before their addiction.
Right.
There's someone during, but they can be someone after.
Yeah.
And they're not just a number. They're not just a statistic.
Right.
And what about that, what about that poor child? Like, what are we going to do with her? Like, where does she go? I mean, who can help her?
Right.
And so it was, moments like that. And that one in particular comes to mind.
How do you take care of yourself, or did you, during this
That's-
time?
So, Carly, that's a good question. In last episode, which hasn't come out yet, that's the question we're going to be asking all of our guests. It's the most important question.
Yeah.
How, we talked to a lot of first responders, whatever the case may be, and we talked to service members and veterans, and a lot of service members and veterans will tell you that first responder trauma is another level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You know?
can't
Yeah.
imagine some of the things you've seen and heard.
So there you go. Good job, Carly. Because you
Yeah.
had to listen to that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's, in the Old Testament, in the I think it's in the book of Genesis, maybe it's in the book of Exodus. But anyway, so it's a story about Moses, okay? So Moses comes to a point in his life. He was raised in the house of Pharaoh. He has gone through his mom placing him in a basket, sending him down the river. He's found. He's reared in the house of Pharaoh. And so there's this moment in his life when he's experiencing this internal conflict, okay? What he's seeing, he's thinking that it's wrong. He's believing it's wrong. And he ends up killing a soldier, okay? And so I just remember years ago reading that story and just thinking about, we live in internal conflict in all those 4 dimensions of our existence, biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. And so how do you manage that? How do you find a way to decompress and to detoxify? And I work out a lot.
Yeah.
I work out a lot. I read a lot. Just do a lot of research. But I think the biggest thing is do a lot of self-reflecting.
Yeah.
Just do a lot of self-reflecting, and just to know that there's an opportunity to constantly grow, constantly evolve, constantly learn. But you got to be conscientious and taking advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not just going to happen. And, you are who you are today, but let's try to be a better person tomorrow.
Right.
You're never going to be perfect. I mean, nobody's perfect,
Nope.
I think there's only one person that we know of that
Mhm.
we can describe as having been perfect, that's ever walked the face of this earth, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. But, your mistakes don't have to define you. Work to allow them to refine you,
Mm-hmm.
and work to grow and to be a better person every single day. And one of the things that I do is I try to pour into other people as much as I possibly can. and take advantage of those opportunities to do and say things to help other people. Also, to be open to the fact that, if you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. That's okay. I mean, that's a character of strength. I mean, you can't just push through. You can push weight, but you can't just.
You don't have to do it alone.
Right. Absolutely.
It's recovery.
Right.
That's what
Absolutely.
recovery is.
Yeah.
I mean, and the solution is a consistent pursuit of spiritual connection.
Yep.
It's
Giving
taking care of
back.
yourself, and it's helping others.
Yep.
And then it's also having enough awareness to ask for help. And so I love hearing you say that, because I mean, that's what the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous are
Yeah.
based on,
Right.
quite
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. Pouring on other people.
It's just a better way to live.
Yeah. I had an epiphany about leadership, and it's another thing that I share, every time I'm doing a leadership presentation, especially when I'm talking with elementary school students, middle school, and high school. The conversation about leadership most of the time is not had between parents and kids until, they're maybe in teenage years, young adult, older. But, the conversation about leadership should be had as young as possible. We're all born with the capacity for and of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But with that is a fiduciary responsibility. If you were born to lead no one else, you were born to lead yourself. If there's nobody following you, if you're not in a position right now where you're leading people, your most important responsibility is to lead yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to understand that the decisions you make and the actions you take shape and frame the environment that you live your life in. And I tell this story about 3 former NBA basketball players. One of them, whose name is Muggsy Bogues, another one whose name is Earl Boykin, and then there's one named Spud Webb. Spud Webb was 5'6", Earl Boykin was 5'5", and Muggsy Bogues was 5'3", okay? And I use those 3 former NBA players in this example. If you view yourself based upon things about you that you had no role in determining and that you have no control of, you will never maximize your capacity for leadership. Think about it. If Muggsy Bogues, Earl Boykin, and Spud Webb viewed who they were based on their height, they would have never made it to the NBA.
No way.
Because the average
Or won a
NBA player,
dunk contest.
that's right. The average NBA player at the time was 6'6", 6'7".
Right.
Okay? But what they said was, I have the ability, and not only do I have the ability, I will be an NBA basketball player because of everything about me that I can control.
Mm-hmm.
My beliefs, my values, my morals, and my norms. You decide what you believe. You decide what you value, who you value, how you value. You decide what your definition of morality and normality is. And so focus on those things that make you who you truly are, because those things formulate your mindset, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Your belief, values, morals, and norms. Your decisions emanate from your mindset, okay? You got to focus on perceiving it, conceiving it, believing it, and achieving it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Amen.
I love that.
I try to implement. So I have a 7 and 9-year-old little boys, and I want them to feel the things that happen to them. I don't want them to disregard, but also trying to find the balance of getting them to feel it and not drown in it, knowing that they have control over, to a degree, of what they feel and how they think and how they move forward. I don't know, but it can be a hard balance between, yes, feel what you're feeling, but don't drown in that feeling of hopelessness. Is that making sense? Like following along what you're saying of
Right.
having control, but also not getting numb to what's happening and pushing it through.
You make a great point. Nick Saban said this, and matter of fact, I heard him say this just before the national championship game. He was talking about all the great teams that he coached at Alabama. And he said he would always tell his players this: play with emotion, but don't become emotional.
Mm.
And so to your point, just learning to manage,
Yeah.
that surge of emotion, because emotions are powerful. And once you learn how to navigate that and surf those emotions and direct them towards you accomplishing your hopes, goals, dreams, and aspirations.
Right.
Now you're at a good point where you are exercising good leadership, self-leadership, and you can make more good decisions than bad.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And Carly, to your point, my biggest thing, my boys are obviously young, and one of them can't speak English yet. Communication. You
Right.
alluded to it at the
Mhm.
beginning of this conversation. If I would have known how to communicate how I felt without any shame or guilt or anything attached to it, I could have learned how to process differently, and then
Right.
I probably wouldn't have wanted to change the way I felt in any form or fashion.
Yep. Yep.
So my big thing is like kind of correlated to what you said with your boys. It's like acknowledge how you feel, speak about how you feel. There's a fly flying around if you can see it. Sorry.
It's probably on meth.
Yeah. Hey, probably so. Yeah. But that is like the most important thing that I want to teach my kids.
Right.
So I appreciate you sharing
And
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Gen X, and it was kids are to be seen and not heard.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just, y'all just get
Yeah.
outside, which was great. I'm proud of my generation, but it was just different, and we've learned so much since.
Right.
Finding
Right.
balance.
Yeah, finding
Right.
balance.
Right.
Finding
And
balance.
Danielle, what a great point, because there's so many predators out there
Yeah.
who are looking for people
Oh, yeah.
that are in a vulnerable headspace
Mm-hmm.
right now. And so creating a safe space for people to come forward and talk about their feelings and their emotions and to just say, look, I need help right now.
Yeah.
Particularly, kids, and so that they don't go to someone else.
Right.
Right.
So, and self-medicate through their behavior or by what they place inside of their bodies.
And I really do feel that stigma around a lot of this stuff continues to improve. I mean, we're millennials, but I remember back then it was like, you just got to be tough, man. You got to
Right.
be tough.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
got to bottle it up. And I
Yeah.
mean, especially with, older generations, it was even more intense. But
Right.
I feel like I'm seeing it now. Now, it kind of comes with some other interesting stuff. You've got people who use it as a justification
Right.
and, my mental health. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but there's still a responsibility.
Right.
So I've seen what I've noticed, at least with, younger generations, even now, is the stigma around mental health and substance abuse has almost kind of become a fad in a weird way.
Yes.
Right.
And
I
it's
agree.
almost gone to like this other
Too
end of the
far.
spectrum.
Right.
To where
Right.
it's kind of like, right.
You still got to stand up. and
We
get
acknowledge,
going.
life
Yeah.
is going to keep
Yeah.
moving on. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got to figure out how you can move on with it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is
man.
that, or do you see any of that with some of the stuff you do when you're talking to young people?
Yeah. I mean, and stigma. I mean, not only just with young people, but just across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the most surprisingly is when I talk with adults and their mindset and their thought process about stigma. Just to give you an example. I mean, I don't know where you are as far as the use and availability of naloxone.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my profession, we have a lot of people who believe that the broader distribution of naloxone enables people to use drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if somebody makes a decision to use drugs, they're going to decide to use drugs regardless of
Right.
a medication like naloxone or
Yeah.
Opvie. I said, those medications have been around for years. I mean, now they've only recently in the past 10 years or so been made available to the public. But if someone's making a decision to use drugs, they're making a decision to use drugs to get high. They don't want to die.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
not making it available means that you might be contributing to them. But at any rate, but just to know that mindset is out there. And when I talk to young kids, I tell them, look, you've got to love yourself enough to say no to drugs and death by saying yes to life and success. And what that means at times is that if you're thinking about something that is not in your best interest, if you're thinking about harming yourself, if you're thinking about placing something inside of your body just to fit in, talk to your parents.
Or somebody.
Talk to your parents.
teacher.
Talk
Yeah.
to someone who you know that has your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. And be willing to open up and let someone help you help yourself.
What kind of questions do they ask you? The young kids.
So, most of the questions that they ask me questions about people that I know with stories that are within their age group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
And then I've had questions. Man, I'll tell you the story. So I was in North Mississippi. I was up there for 2 days, and we did the entire school district. Okay, and I was at one of the elementary schools, and I opened it up for questions. And this kid stood up and he took the microphone and he asked me how could he help his mother who was struggling
Wow.
with addiction.
Wow.
I've had that probably happen since I've been going to schools for the past 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
about 5 or 6 times,
Wow.
either during the question and answer or afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I've even had a couple of high school students, and I've also had it, happen at different events. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
You said something earlier that hit me hard. Love yourself enough. The reason I even work here and in this space, my passion, I love to help everybody, all ages, all colors, I don't care. But man, my true passion is to help me, like the kids that are just like I was, young adults,
Yep.
failure to launch.
yeah.
And my message to them, I've been working with a family for a few weeks, a young man, Kratom, totally uneducated family, needs a lot of help. And, my first message to him was just like, man, you have got to show up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn that, longer
Yeah.
than I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key message. It's like, show up enough for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to show up for all these other people right now. You have to show up for yourself. And I think with young people, that message can hit home a little harder than maybe older people. I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, my daughter, she's in the United States Navy right now, and she is stationed at Camp David, married, 2 beautiful girls, Olora and Isla Rose. But
names.
before she enlisted in the Navy, we had a conversation, and I told her this. I said, I can't love you enough for you to be successful.
mm-hmm.
I can do everything I can to support you, to put you in the position, and I will continue to do that. But I cannot love you enough for you to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the same thing that my grandmother told me years ago. But it was a little different conversation, because, we were living on, her retirement, which was probably, I don't know, maybe $900 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you got to get it.
Yeah.
She said, Stevie, you got to get it. You got to get it in school. You just got to get it. I'll do everything I can for you, but you got to get it.
Yeah.
And so that's where that mindset and that thought process comes from, because, options were limited. I wanted to go to college, but if that wasn't it, I was going to, join the military or get a job. But, I want to go to college. I want to play football. So
Yeah.
she said, well, you better go out there and lift them weights and
That's right.
Yeah.
and get big enough and good enough to do it. But that's where that mindset comes from. You got to love yourself enough. I mean, your parents can do everything to put you in a position to be successful. And I tell young kids all the time, don't shy away from who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't shy away from the resources that you have. Embrace it.
Right.
Okay. But just know this. Just because those resources are available doesn't guarantee your success.
Yeah.
You still got to do your part.
Yeah. You got to move your feet.
Got to
Yeah.
do the work.
So, yeah, this is all really good stuff. Where are we at in the state of Mississippi? And this, I know you get asked this question every day, 10 times a day, with Kratom and a lot of this gas station
boy.
stuff. Because I know we've made some progress, and I know that you and I had a situation where we worked together on a case where we helped a person who was struggling with a lot of that stuff in an emergency situation, and I know some things have happened since then. I know our listeners are curious too, and I know our employees are curious. It's affecting so many
Yeah.
people, And in a lot, what I'm seeing is it's taking people back out who've been sober for a little while, who justify that it's legal and they can use it at a gas station. But then it's also people that may not really have a history of substance use disorder. You know, they start using it and then they realize, man, I don't feel good. I need to go get some more of that stuff. And then a full-blown addiction develops. So it's like we talked about earlier, there's no discrimination with this stuff. But
Right. Kratom is a prime example of the chameleon, deceptive-like nomenclature of the drug culture. And I tell people all the time, since that experience that we had, I walked away from that having learned a lot. And what I tell people is don't lose your sobriety. Don't lose your life in recovery over what's sold in a convenience store or gas station. And then that's my lead in to talking about drugs like Kratom. Our legislature, I commend them. They did a great job by, enacting legislation that requires you to be 21 in order to purchase Kratom. I'd like to see it banned, scheduled the same way they did tianeptine.
Yeah, right.
Tianeptine is a scheduled controlled substance now. But that's a step in the right direction. And I commend our legislature for doing that.
For sure.
And what we've got to do is work together to educate the public, I would rather them come see Daniel than to try to self-medicate based on stress, worry, anxiety, or some, undiagnosed, untreated mental illness out of a convenience store or gas station.
Right.
I was told a story about a corporate CEO has a shoulder injury. A coworker says, man, stop off at, Joe Bob's, convenience store. Buy this. He does. 6 months later, he's in full-blown addiction to Kratom.
Right.
6 months after that, he's no longer with his wife, separated. 6 months after that, divorced, lost his job, everything, because of something sold in a convenience store or gas station. So that's where my passion comes from when we talk about a drug like Kratom. I was talking with someone who's in recovery, and he said, yeah, yo, Max, he said, man, look, I've used opioids. I use a lot of stuff, but that Kratom, man, that is some bad blankety blank.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I've talked to people like you all about treating people who are addicted to Kratom, and it's just as, I guess, challenging as treating someone who's addicted to meth or heroin.
Absolutely.
And as it's processed through your body, as you know, the science seeks out the mu receptor, the opioid receptor in the brain, and it's essentially an opioid.
Yeah. Right.
It's just bad stuff, and people become addicted to it either knowingly, unknowingly, advertently, or inadvertently, again, by buying these products in convenience stores and gas stations. And even with those products, they still too can contain synthetic opioids and other cannabinoids because that industry is not regulated by the USDA or the FDA.
Right. And you just have no idea what's in that crap.
You don't at all.
Do y'all communicate with other states? I mean, that may be a dumb question,
No,
but I'm
that's a great
curious,
question.
regionally, I would imagine some of the same situations are happening, but, are y'all in constant communication about new things they may be seeing or whatever the case may be?
We do. And I can tell you, again, another one of the good things about the Department of Corrections is in communicating with peers, throughout the country, we see some same, like, and similar challenges. And so what we see in the ecosystem of corrections is a microcosm of what is being experienced in the communities, because any contraband introduced into a corrections facility is coming from a community. And so drug contraband that finds its way in there, even with all the efforts that we have ongoing to prevent that, it's coming from a community. And so that's an indicator as to what's being sold and used in that community. And so we interact, we communicate one with the other, we exchange information and intelligence about, what's going on in the different state and federal corrections ecosystems. And then we try to push that information out, to public, service professionals and law enforcement officers in those specific communities.
Got it. Yeah, I'm curious because, people, and then we've got the vape stuff, now you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
buy flavored vapes in
Oh,
Mississippi. Well, you can,
Right.
but
Right.
it's harder to get nowadays, right?
Right.
But and then you hear like, oh well, Arkansas, I mean, people will drive to the Arkansas line
Right.
to get something, or if they
Right.
live in Arkansas, they come to Mississippi, and I mean,
right.
so I just was
Louisiana.
curious, and I imagine, I just was curious what that communication looks
Yeah.
like.
So the illicit drug culture, as we all know, these are very motivated individuals.
Mhm.
Okay, and driving across state lines to acquire a product and bring back to sell to a state where it's scheduled is, common. I mean, it's very common. Ordering products online, it's very common, and this challenge is attacking us on all fronts,
Mhm.
and law enforcement can't do it
Yeah.
by themselves.
No way.
You all can't do it by
Mhm.
yourselves.
So
we're all
much.
we're all on the same team. Okay. We may be wearing different uniforms, but we're all on the same team,
Right.
and we can't do it all by ourselves. Irregardless of what people think or what they believe, blowing up the boats that are bringing in the contraband that's not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna take having those conversations with our kids as young as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to blow up boats. We need to do everything. We need to do everything that we can to protect the home front.
Mhm.
One of the things that I tell people all the time, we're already in the Third World War.
Yeah.
It's a different theater of war. Do you not see what's going on?
Right.
I mean, all you have to do is look at the number of drug-related overdose deaths, even though they may have been under 100,000 this past year, but it's still too many.
Yeah. For
You know,
sure.
I mean, people are still dying.
Mhm.
And so the communication is important. The continued efforts are important, but we have to always have the mindset, I'm not doing enough.
Right.
Don't focus on someone else not doing enough. Focus on you not doing enough.
What am I
I'm
doing?
not doing enough.
Mhm.
I've got to do more. I've got to do more. I've got to do more, because you're not only fighting for you and your family and your community, but you're fighting for the ability for us to be able to live the way that we live in this country.
Mhm.
And so, the entry of drugs into this country is a new theater of war. And make no mistake about it. I mean, countries like China, they're using Mexican drug cartels as their proxy, and their goal is to, literally undermine,
Infiltrate.
absolutely,
Mhm.
and undermine the foundation of this country.
Yeah.
What do you wish you saw more, or do you have advice for facilities like ours to work together more with the officers? And what advice do you have for us for that teamwork to happen?
Well, first thing I have to do is, again, I got to say, man, what a great facility.
Mhm.
I mean, wow. You all have a great facility here. You are doing great work.
Thank you.
Great work. They've got to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to know who you are, and they've got to know the product that you bring to the table.
Right.
And I think knowing who you are, putting yourself in a position to fly your flag and say, hey, this is who we are.
Mhm.
This is where we are. This is the product that we bring to the table. Let us help you help yourself.
Yeah.
And just knowing who you are. A lot of law enforcement professionals, it's not that they don't get approached about where people can find help, and it's not that we don't have challenges and we don't need help.
Mhm.
We just don't know where.
Yeah.
Where those services are, and how do we get connected. That's the biggest thing for us, knowing who you are, knowing where you are, knowing what you bring to the table, and developing that rapport, cultivating that relationship. And I know, Daniel, you do a lot of that, and I think that's the biggest key.
Mhm.
That's the biggest key, because it's not a matter of if
Mm-hmm.
that law
Right.
enforcement professional and his or her family is going to face that challenge. It's the reality of when.
When?
Right. For sure. It's a good question. Well, do y'all have any other questions?
What a great.
I feel
This-
like we have hit on education, but we've been real in this room today,
Yeah,
talking
absolutely.
about real issues, but we've also talked about a lot of hope
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
solution.
Lots of passion.
You know, I
Absolutely.
mean, we're talking about problem and solution here. And the big takeaway for everybody that's listening is there is a solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There is.
And I would like to encourage listeners, as long as the flag is flying, we're winning.
Yeah.
There you go.
As long as the
I
flag
like
is
that.
flying,
That's
we're
right.
winning. Even with the challenges that we're facing every day, as long as the flag is flying, we're winning.
Love that.
That's good.
That's a great way to end it.
Yeah. That's the cherry on top. Well, Colonel, it's been a pleasure. I really
Thank
am
you for
looking
everything
forward,
you do.
Thank you.
looking
Thank you
forward to
all.
everybody listening to this episode. So everybody, thank you. We'll tag Colonel Maxwell. Y'all follow along. He's active on LinkedIn and other socials. He's doing a lot of really good stuff for our community. And like he said, we're a team. So thank y'all, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.